Today is Tuesday, October 2nd, 2018. Today's open study session is for our 2018-2019 budget review. Anybody like to start it?
Well, it's the 2018-2019. It's review of these salaries. I mean, we did the budget, so I guess not. You know what? I'm not even going to say anything.
Well, you want this closed study session to bring up some of the salaries?
What I thought, and everybody thought, was to have the study session regarding these positions before the vote. So we'd know what we were voting on, but.
So what
that motion was voted down. We did vote on it, it was voted down. That's why we went to what we did.
Okay. So, Madam Chair,
Councilman
so there's a
Abdullah?
proposal on the table to have some reductions of different salaries of different department heads. I believe probably one of the best ways to do this, since we're doing a study session, is to go through these one at a time, and whoever the council person that has a proposal to reduce these, specifically one salary at a time, the whys that we should be reducing each salary this particular amount, because these are salaries that we gave an increase to. I feel strongly personally against this, and my reasoning is we gave them raises. I know you guys said there was some stuff that was found out later, but we gave them raises based on the fact as to how long they had been here, the job that they had been doing, and I think the city and its administration overall is doing a pretty good job. Is it perfect? No, it's not, but no city is perfect. But we gave a lot of these different department heads a raise of $7,500, $21,000, depends on what that particular amount is, because they had, some of them had taken a pay cut way back when, and then now we came back and then took it right back off the table. I talked about this before, but I'll repeat it again. For the morale, it's not good, and the end result is exactly what we thought would happen. We've got, for a multitude of reasons, but we've got the emergency manager right now retiring. The former emergency manager. We've got the building and engineering department has decided to retire. We've got the recreation department has decided to retire. We've got the DPW has decided to retire. When you take 6 positions, 6 department heads, and you lose 4 of them in any city, in any business, in any entity, it is just not good business. What's going to happen now, you're going to go back out and try to recruit people to try to get them to hire in, and they're not going to. I can tell you myself personally, I go into a company and I see that 4 out of the 6 have already left within a 10-day period. Who's going to want to work there? And not to mention at a reduced cut based on, and I went through all this, the Wayne County salary of surveys, and I can show you city by city, and I noticed on a lot of them, we were either below or right around, and maybe on a couple of them we're a little bit above. So it's going to be hard to be able to retain and hire new people. So with that, that's my personal opinion. With that being the case, since this proposal was put on the table, convince me, and I'm going open-minded about everything, one at a time, why those salaries should be cut like that, because we gave it to them, and now we're taking it back. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Constant.
Respectfully, so for some of these, I know the issue was, some of the positions, the issue was that the department head was receiving both their pay and, you know, they're sort of in the drop, that they were receiving those retirements. Well, all those people are retired or going to retire. And for our ordinance director, that's not the case. So I would like to at least have some discussion about how these, you know, reductions were arrived at. So I know, for example, there was going to be a 3rd position in the fire department, and Councilwoman Lisa Hicks Clayton was concerned about that being in the cuts, and so that was taken out. But for example, the investigative services secretary position, you know, why is that here? The grant coordinator salary, I mean, grant coordinator, so I suppose that's the CDBG director.
That is correct.
But that salary comes from, is paid with HUD money. Same thing with the comptroller, we lost a comptroller and that was hired. So yeah, just if we could hear some explanation as to how these amounts were arrived at.
Can that HUD money be used for something else besides, so that's
Correct.
pretty much
No, so much is allocated to administration. That's where it comes from.
But isn't that money that the raise could have been used for other projects? It could have, according to HUD.
That's my understanding, too.
According to HUD, and I talked to HUD, that money could have been transferred to a project. So it's not just because it came from HUD.
Excuse me, no.
Excuse me.
Point of order? No. Be recognized.
I'm just saying,
before
according to
speaking.
HUD, and I called Mr. Keith Hernandez down at HUD, that portion could be used for another project. And that's coming right from HUD, the director of this area, all the way to Chicago. So I would think that he knows what he's talking about. So, but that's part of that. That doesn't mean a hill of beans right now, but that money could have been used for another project. And I was always wanting to know, or wanting to wait for the Plant Moran audit before we moved on anything. But in saying so, I based my concern on a letter from the state treasury that was not shown to us before we voted on this budget. We were never showed this, and we were told that nobody got the letter, but yet there was a citizen that came up 2 weeks before we were told nobody had the letter. How does a citizen have a letter and we don't?
I did not have the letter either.
How did the citizen get the letter, Mr. Mayor?
Good question. Who's the citizen? Well,
Mr. Zohair Abdul Haq had
how
the
did
letter.
you get the copy of the letter?
From the state website. It is on the website of the state of Michigan for July.
Why did he get to talk?
We just asked him a
He asked
question,
him a-
that's why.
But when you're
I was
addressed.
speaking at the time, and I asked him to
How
speak.
embarrassing.
Okay, I guess the point of,
You're a hell of a union leader, you know that?
okay. No, if you're addressed, you can answer from the audience. Let's get that understanding. If there's a direct question we need to ask somebody, as the mayor did, that's why he was able to answer, and only why. Okay.
So that was the reason why I voted the way I did. We didn't get the letter. We should have got the letter. Seems like everybody had the letter but city council.
And the mayor.
And you say you don't, well, I'm not going to say you didn't have it because
did
I
not
don't
have
know.
it.
Because
I did not
I can't
have
say
it.
you didn't because I don't know
And it
that.
was not addressed to me.
So, you know, that's a big thing to have. You're in the middle of a budget, and the state comes down and tells you you're $169 million in healthcare retiree underfunding. What do you want me to say? That's all I need to say is that.
Madam Chair, if I might.
Mayor, go ahead.
All cities are now having to, under state law that was passed, deal with unfunded liabilities. This is not unique to Dearborn Heights, and people are overreacting to this, and we will come up with a plan to address it. And it's fortunate that our pension is beyond the state requirements, and we'll be able to manage this as other communities will be faced with the same situation. And that number was provided to all the council members and was in last year's budget. So for anybody sitting here, the new council members may not have been aware of it, but anybody who was a council member as of last year should have been aware of that number.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Constant?
as I've said before, the city's big expense is police, fire, picking up the trash. These, I'd like, you know, I think we deserve some discussion about how these particular positions were arrived at, how the one fire position was taken out. So their salaries cuts, the city financial situation is what it is. The requirements of the state of Michigan have changed. The accounting requirements and certain liabilities have to now be reported. some of it based on the City of Detroit bankruptcy, but how were these positions arrived at? Why are the cuts to these particular positions?
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair?
Councilman Wenzel?
Well, I know for a fact the firefighters position was taken out of there because of the grant that was awarded to the fire department, paid for that position, from my understanding. I don't know if we have anybody here. And it was mentioned also about the Parks and Recreation position and the building department position. I think we have two very eligible candidates in Kim Constance to take on the position of Parks and Recreation, and Rick Watland for the building department. So I don't think we'll have an issue with replacing someone with very reputable, honest people to take those positions.
Can I point out, Councilman, that, for instance, let's look at Rick's position in the building department. He would take a significant pay decrease with what is now the building director position, and Rick doesn't want it. I mean, why should you take on more responsibilities? And let me look up. I think it's the difference in pay is $6,000 or $8,000.
Now, Mayor, did you ask him personally that question?
I have talked to all of the people in there, yes.
Have you asked Rick that specific question, if he would be interested in taking that position?
He was asked, correct.
It's my understanding he wasn't. I spoke with him.
I spoke with him
recently.
too. He's very interested in the position.
I can't explain why they're getting two different answers. What, would you take a pay cut?
That's his choice, not ours.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Constant?
again, I just would like to know how these positions were arrived at. And Councilman Wenzel, you don't need to bring up my wife. You really don't.
Oh, I'm referring to her as your wife. I was referring to her as a deputy director for 31 years and very well competent of taking that position on in my field, in my view. But I'm just saying it was brought up that how can we replace all these people quitting, and there's two right there now you don't have to worry about.
Well, I guess even when the chief retires, there's someone set up to step in and take over, right?
We're not hurting in that department.
Everybody, there's a...
No, we don't have to.
There's an order that we go in.
We don't have to go out and hire a new chief from the outside.
No, we don't.
That's why the system's set up the way it is. That's why you have a deputy.
Council Chair?
Councilman Muscat?
The other thing that bothered me more than anything is when I received the budget with the pay raises. Matter of fact, I believe Councilman Constant called me right away and kind of expressed a view. We had the three directors of Recreation, Building Engineering, and DPW were added in for a raise, and for God know, they know that they weren't supposed to get a raise. There was an ordinance written. Why would you add them in?
Because you're misinterpreting.
No, I did not misinterpret
Yes,
anything. The word annually is annually, okay?
Mr. Miyake wrote a written opinion.
And
you make up rules as you go along.
I didn't make up any rules. I sat out there and listened to this for quite a bit of time when you guys were going through this. And you can't and with all due respect to Mr. Miyake, he tried to change the meaning of the word annually. Annually is annually, okay? And I can't speak of it because he told us we can't talk about his opinion in public. So I can't say nothing about that opinion. But he wrote the ordinance and he's giving an opinion on the ordinance. He shouldn't be giving an opinion on his own ordinance. Okay? But that was held back from this council. This was we're all newer council people. But I know they weren't supposed to get it. Matter of fact, I talked to a few of those people that left. They understood that they weren't going to get more than $55,000. Okay? So that was a Hail Mary pass going around us. I didn't care for that either.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Constant.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, and Councilman Oskar, I do remember our conversations. The ordinance director, so the ordinance director is not receiving his salary.
Correct.
and his retirement. So why is he here? And the salary for investigative services secretary position, or the comptroller, or for that matter, the HR director? They're not persons, they were not department heads who were receiving both their salary and their retirement.
I mean, all this stuff was discussed at the last meeting, when we approved it. So I don't know, we have to keep going back and forth.
Councilman Abdallah?
I'd also like to know, when you take 117,600, you subtract the difference of 20,600, which is for the grant coordinator, which again, we've talked about, it's paid by federal money. It's not from city's budget directly. So with a $43 million budget, I'm trying to understand where $100,000, reducing the salaries of all kinds of department heads by roughly about $100,000 is going to make that much of a difference in our budget. Or in terms of $168 million that we are underfunded, again, $168 million, where that's going to make a difference in our budget. And as I talked about at the council meeting, we have in our budget, you could count them, but I don't know, hundreds upon hundreds of different line items that were not touched. And on top of that, it appears to be, just from my standpoint, it appears to be different department heads that were hired by the mayor's department, in favor of the mayor's department, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just concerned that this is a little more personal than just to save money. Because when you take $100,000, compare that to the $43 million, it's pennies.
Understandable.
So, but then pennies at a cost of what? At a cost of losing 4 or 5 people already and still moving forward. So I just hope nobody has a different agenda than what's showing here.
Okay, can I speak, please?
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks. It's not targeted at individuals as much as it's the beginning. It's not the end of taking and cutting away at the budget. Every little bit helps. You just can't do it all overnight. You saw how long it took us to approve the budget piece by piece. We were here for hours. It's a beginning. It's not the end. So just to put that out there.
But running a business or running a government or running anything, and we've lost already 4 and possibly 1 or 2 more on the way. Do you think this is a good thing as far as how the city's running? And and I'm not going to put you personally on the spot. I'll put myself on the spot. If I'm coming into this government and I'm going to be hired and I see a situation between the council and the mayor's department, I see 4 or 5 people that department heads have already quit, I wouldn't want to work here. So we're losing people that are already here and we're not going to be able to replace them. Do you think that's a good thing for the city, for the residents? I don't think so.
I think it's a good thing for the residents that we don't spend money we don't have. I mean, we could end up in emergency management. I can't sleep with myself.
Oh, God.
I spoke with Treasury at length on the phone. I talked to Treasury personally, and I also have been told we're in trouble. We are in trouble.
That's opposite what Plant Moran told you 2 weeks.
Plant Moran audits what they are shown, not everything. It's not a correct audit, it's a sampling. They also told us that. Okay, point of order. We don't need people from the back speaking. There will be open comment at the end.
Okay, so Madam Chair, if I may ask for this. If we could have the Councilman Bazey, he's the one that made this proposal, if he could convince us, myself included, and I'm open-minded, line item by line item, why these particular salaries were reduced by this much and why these particular specific positions.
Again, as the council chair mentioned a few times, this is only the beginning, and we still have to wait for the next audit. We haven't seen what the audit results for the next audit. So we can go back again and look at these once we get the audit result for this year. As of right now, we don't have that. And as I mentioned at the last meeting when we voted on this, and as mentioned by Councilman Muscat, we did not see that letter from the state, or it was not, according to the mayor, he didn't see it. Well, we didn't see it either, and we made
we made the changes or it was voted on for the millages, as I mentioned, keep going back and forth mentioning the same thing. We voted on the millages and we were supposed to go to the budget to discuss these, but it wasn't discussed. We passed it and the clerk was there, it was mentioned. I went back, looked at the tape, and it did mention, somebody mentioned a few times that this is fluid. We can go back and change it. It wasn't us that said it was fluid. It was mentioned by somebody else. And you can go back to the tape and review it. And again, you know, we can go back and revisit at the next audit results that once Plant Moran comes back and presents our what the findings are for this year. Again, you know, this is not, nothing is in stone. You know, we have to go back and review what the audit results right now. You know, we purchased a golf course. We have not seen any plan what we're going to do with the, who's going to run the golf course. And I FOIA'd some information from Wayne County. I have some numbers, and I don't have them with me today, but I was concerned about that as well. You know, we need to find a plan and who's going to run the course. We have not seen an agreement by anybody what the plan is, how they're going to run the course, who's going to run it, and how much money is going to be coming out of it. So there's a lot of money going out, but we need a plan. We need to see what the audit results are to see where the state of the city is, in financial state.
I'm in agreement, too, that I would like to go back and revisit this once we get the Plant Moran results.
But did we not all agree, Madam Chair, did we not all agree amongst all of us to vote for the purchase of the golf course? That's at 1.8 million. So if we're okay spending 1.8 million, which I'm in favor of, I mean, I'm publicly saying this, I'm in favor of, but if we're okay with buying something for 1.8 million, but then, yeah, we got a problem with $100,000. And again, I'm okay with buying the golf course. I'm not saying go buy it.
I can understand where you're coming from.
I'm just trying to understand the logic. And at this point, up to this date, and that's why I voted against this, I've not been convinced. I've not seen anything that has convinced me that this is a good idea, other than, you know, hopefully not, but some motive to get people to just leave, because that's what's going to happen when we continue with this. Because it's been proven. The history's there.
That was given it.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is there's so much stuff that we still have to go through. We still have a TPOM contract that we haven't even gone through, that we don't even know what it says about, you know, pay raises or anything.
You have a copy of that.
Has it been signed by the union?
It was. Dishorn signed it, as did Dave Lamontagne.
Right, but it hasn't been approved yet, right? It wasn't ratified by the union?
It was approved by the last council, but the fact of the matter is we've instituted the raises that are in there, so you all have got copies of that. Those have not changed. So don't say you don't know what they're going to be, because you know when you have them, the copy.
Well, that was, again, as you mentioned, it was voted on by the previous council, and they came back in December, said that this is not the contract we signed, so we've been through this for a few months. So it was put on the agenda another time. Then, Mayor, you removed it when the president of the union came out and said, hey, I didn't sign this. I don't know why you guys are voting on this. And all of a sudden, it was removed off the agenda that day. So,
I didn't remove it.
I think we should go back to the tape and look at that one.
Fine.
Okay, any other discussion?
Was the
Councilman Wenzel, please?
Was the contract ratified by rank and file? Does anybody know?
No.
It was not
never presented to them.
Okay.
So it was never, we have a contract that was never presented or ratified. Councilman Muscat.
Mr. Mayor, when do we expect Plant Moran to come and give us their findings?
Normally it's around Thanksgiving.
Is that late?
Yeah. They're still in auditing. Thank God, Linda, thanks for staying around, because we were at risk after she was, I mean, all of you need to be more, when you address these department heads, we all take a beating every day, and to get it from this table, it hurts. But thank God she didn't leave, because we would not be able to complete the audit.
Thank you, Linda.
Councilman Wenzel?
I've gotten several emails in the last couple of weeks about citizens asking for a forensic audit. Now, I'm not 100% sure. I kind of know what a forensic audit is. Is that, and I understand it's expensive?
Yes.
Do we know what that, what's it actually entail, a forensic audit?
You do a forensic audit if you think that normally they're done in connection with criminal activity. I have actually, as a CPA, performed forensic audits at 2 banks. Those are very intensive.
What is that? What's the cost of something like that?
Well, it depends on how you set up your program, but I would say that, so you can't give an estimate unless you know exactly what you're being asked to address in an audit. There has never been an indication from any of the audits that this city has had from day one that would suggest a forensic audit was necessary. If there was, you would have Plant Moran come in here and tell you that. We have gotten, in fact, clean opinions, and that's one thing that you always look for is the audit opinion, and we have consistently received what is called a clean opinion, and that is the highest and best that you want.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion?
Madam Chair?
Councilman Constant?
Yeah, I mean, Plant Moran, they audit our city and a lot of other cities, and I mean, a forensic audit is something often that's done to prepare for litigation, but that implies that there's somebody stealing money or something. We have an audit. Plant Moran is doing our audit.
It's an audit on steroids.
I mean, is it like $50,000 or $10,000 or $100,000? I mean, is it something that we can, that we can settle this once and for all and have it done, or
Maybe.
But
I mean, is it necessary? I mean,
Well, I guess give us the answers we're looking for, a complete forensic
I
audit.
understand. Now, I might be mistaken, but when Pratt Moran audits us, they don't audit everything. They pick one category and then they look at that category. And like very few things
No, what an audit does, based, I could give you an explanation for 2 minutes, and that's what I'll give you, or I could give you one for an hour. I mean, people take classes in auditing, but an audit uses statistical analysis and statistical sampling in order to make the auditors be able to believe that the numbers that they are provided, the statements of the client, are represented and appropriate. In addition, they look at, in our case, Governmental Accounting Standard Board opinions and make sure that we're following what is called GASB, General Government Accounting Standards. If we were Ford Motor Company or commercial, it would be FASB, Financial Accounting Standard Board. And so you make sure the statements are presented in accordance with those requirements. And that's why it's important with the clean opinion. An auditor is obligated, if they find that the statements are not being representative of actually what the condition of the client's statements are, or they did not satisfy GASB or FASB requirements, then you get a what is called a qualified opinion, and that they will state that we, as a profession, will state that in our particular opinion. So that is the highest and most, the thing that I always look at if I'm going to invest something in the stock market is, does that particular investment have a clean opinion? And if there's exceptions, then it's kind of a sign to the reader that there's a problem with the numbers and statement that you're reading. And I'll indicate again, we have consistently received unqualified clean opinions, and that's the highest and best thing that you want as a client and the auditor to give you.
Madam Chair?
Councilman Abdullah?
I just want to point out something. As a part of the survey, this is a Conference of Western Wayne survey that we looked at, and I'd been looking at some of the numbers over the weekend. I just want to point out something, and this is one of the sister cities, which I do realize, of course, has a higher budget, Dearborn specifically, but when you factor in number of residents versus number of full-time employees, so in that case, that kind of evens it out. In Dearborn, you have 98,000 residents, so almost 100 residents. They've got 719 full-time employees, a ratio of 1 to every 137 residents. In Dearborn Heights, we have 57,000, a little bit over half of what Dearborn has. And this is a sister city that we always, you know, right or wrong compared to. We have 241 versus the 719 in Dearborn, a ratio of 1 to every 240 residents, which means every employee in Dearborn Heights, just based on those raw numbers, is doing almost double the amount of work or servicing double the amount of number of residents versus what they have in Dearborn. And then we go and cut their pay again, get them to quit, get them to resign, get them to retire. You call it whatever you want to call it. Bottom line is they're gone. And then go out there and try to hire again. Again, I'll repeat it again and again and again. It's just not good business management. And I think we're making I hate to use the words irresponsible mistake, but I think we're making a very irresponsible mistake doing something like this. We could revisit this when they're up for a raise again. But again, to give them a raise and go back and take it back away, you got families that you're dealing with here. I just don't see it. I don't see how this is okay. And I realize, of course, I'm running an uphill battle here. I realize a few of the council members, for whatever reason, feel otherwise, but I just don't think we're making a good decision as a council, as a whole, as a body.
Okay,
Chair.
Councilman Constant.
Yeah, and with all due respect, this idea that the budget is fluid, I mean, if we're going to vote on a budget and review it annually and then change it and then change it again, that's if I'm in a position, and right now the economy's heated up, it's at an all-time high, so it's an employee's market. And this idea that, well, we're going to, you know, change the budget and then maybe 5 months from now change the budget again.
I guess
again, I don't understand these particular positions. I do know there was some thought that persons who were at a certain pay and were also receiving their retirement shouldn't be getting a raise. But now none of those are at issue.
Councilman Wenzel?
Well, I know two of these positions, the people manning them now weren't around when those budget cuts were made and sacrifices were made, which doesn't have that much to do with it, but they personally didn't take the cuts. But I just, you know, I would be in favor of giving everyone a $2,500 raise, just to show that we do respect them, and it is fluid. If we get some positive results back and, hey, we're wrong, we'd be the first ones to admit, Diana, we made a mistake, we're going to give you some more money, but these people are very important to the city. Like Councilman Abdullah said, you know, you can't just have turnover, and that's bad for business. But just to show them that in good faith, I would recommend giving them all a $2,500 raise.
Madam Chair?
Councilman Abdullah?
I'd like to point out in regards to the assessor's office, we had turnover. I was on the tax review board at the time. We had, I think, Mayor, you can tell me better than, what was it, 3, 4?
Yeah.
Within a year and a half, maybe 2 years?
Yes.
That type of turnover. It was, I can tell you, on my end, working with that particular department was absolutely crazy. You couldn't get nothing done. I mean, because you'd meet somebody, everything would be going good, and then they would leave, and I wouldn't get it because it seemed everything was going fine. But then when you'd find out or ask them, it was specifically over the salary because they were getting paid just absolutely too little. So now we're going to go out and look for department heads. And again, this is not my numbers. I mean, this is numbers from this. And you got most of these other department heads getting paid 70, 80, 90 with cities somewhat similar to ours. 70, 80, $90,000. Some are a little bit higher with cities with higher budgets. And then you go to somebody, yeah, we're going to hire you at $54,000. what kind of quality person do you think we're going to be able to get with due respect to whoever we hire? So I don't mean it as a put down whoever we hire, but what kind of experience are you going to get? What kind of skill set are you going to get? What kind of management skills are you going to get? What kind of anything are you going to get when you're paying somebody $54,000 for a job that they can get in any other city for 70 and 80 and 90 on up? And then you say to them, oh, but on top of that, we've just lost 4 or 5 of our, we're hiring 5 new department heads. Again, we're hurting our city with our own hands. And $100-some thousand, because when you take out the amount for the grant, is nothing in the scheme of things in a $43 million budget. That is not something that's going to make any type of difference. I really think we ought to, as a council, ought to rethink this through and think of the consequences. Yes, you save some money, no doubt about it. But what are the consequences? It's cost versus benefit. So if it's at a cost of losing more department heads, it's just not good. I mean, look at it right now. I mean, I know this just started about a week ago. We've already lost some people, and a couple of them, I don't know when they're going to be stopping working. But then we're going to be going out there looking to rehire. How? How are you going to be able to rehire? I couldn't do that. I wouldn't want that job, that's for sure. I mean, I feel sorry for Elizabeth, honestly. But that's going to be one tough sell to convince somebody to take $30,000 less than what other cities are paying them, and with the circumstances and the environment that we have going on here. I don't know how she's going to be able to do it. I hope you're really skilled, Elizabeth.
Okay, any further discussion? Councilman Muscat?
By the way, she is skilled. She is skilled. I didn't mean it that she's not skilled.
Councilman Muscat?
Mr. Mayor, you put a request in for some salaries to be increased by some department heads, and I'm not opposed to anything like that. But are you going to have some sort of comprehensive outline of what you're looking for? And like, let's take DPW. We mentioned this, I believe, at the last meeting, that what the requirements are going to be for the person that's going to be hired. Mm-hmm. I mean, we get online, and if you look at job requirements, when you're looking for a job, they say you have to have this, this, this. Are we going to actually post that, or just say looking for a building director?
No, in our particular case, and I'll take it through with the DPW, I'm looking for somebody that would have experience in a water fund, also in a highway fund, and a building and maintenance, hopefully. More so for the highway and the water. And why that's important is that there are DPW directors in items called charter townships, and they have more responsibility than, let's say, a regular township, which would not deal with any highway stuff. And so consequently, I'm looking for somebody who would have that experience. Now, it's not to say that I would not also look, and people who currently are in the DPW could certainly apply for it. But I would want somebody who has had the responsibility and supervision so that they have a knowledge of Act 51 requirements, that they have a knowledge of water and sewer items, and hopefully have been in a community and have actually had the experience dealing with that. So certainly, I am not looking for political appointments. I'm looking for people who I would want to see come here and be here for the next 15, 20 years. And if there's 2 or 3 other mayors during that time period would say, boy, Pletko picked a good guy, I want to have him stay here. In the case of recreation, I'm going to rely on Ken Greibel's assistance in choosing someone for that particular position. I think he has the expertise and the knowledge, and I had already talked to him about going through the resumes and helping me pick a successor. What are the other couple that we have? For building and engineering, that one is a little more trickier. A person has got to meet the state requirements, or I can't even look at it. They would have to be have a building license and at least 2 years experience doing inspections, although I would hope we would have somebody more so than that. I do have an interest in redefining that particular department. What I'd like to do is have Jack, the ordinance director, take over the responsibility of the clerical staff, but nothing to do with inspections. He's not qualified to do inspections. But on a day-to-day basis, and I've talked about it, and the utilization of more computer-driven in the department, and I think that I would prefer to have the next director concentrate on inspections and handle that, because you have to have that license. And right now, Mohammed took care of heating and cooling. We do not currently have a heating and cooling inspector, so I've got to go out and find somebody for that particular position. He also did some plant reviews, and I've already had some preliminary discussions. The bigger planning reviews are currently done by Wade and Trim's Impact Division. We've talked about them picking up the additional amount of the smaller jobs, if you will, and the plan examiner aspect. And then we also need the person that is tracking and supervising the inspection process. So that's kind of, I might break that up into a couple different components, but that's my thought on that particular position. But so yeah, we would outline it. The going rate is considerable. I was going to put on the next agenda the opportunity so I could go out and hire a heating and cooling inspector. I don't have somebody prearranged. We're going to see who we can get to do that particular assignment. And then I would look to get the director's position, but it will be, I'd like to, and hopefully this council will be agreeable to giving Jack a couple extra bucks to pick up the additional duties and in regards to supervising the clerical staff.
Well, I appreciate all that, but I just wanted to make sure that when we go and try to find someone, we give them an outline of what they're supposed to, credentials they have, not just a generic, we're looking for this person.
Yeah,
okay.
No, I don't have a problem with
Okay,
that.
yeah,
And in fact, because I'm going to, in the case of a couple of them, I do have a couple contacts that I highly respect. They are people that we would not be able to afford in the DPW, but a lot of the directors know people and know people that are maybe in a second or third position behind, and they might look at coming here. And certainly their opinions, I've served with a lot of them in the DUO board. Most of the people on the DUO board are DPW directors. Mayor Solers and I are the two exceptions in regards to that board where you've had mayors serving on it, but most of them are DPW directors.
Okay.
Council Chair.
Councilman Wenzel.
Mayor, do we have anyone in the DPW that would fit that role, and then, or the Parks and Rec that would satisfy your conditions?
I would say that they need to put in an application, and we will look at it. But like I said, in the case of recreation, I've already talked and will be highly relying on Mr. Greibel's opinion.
Yeah, I would think so, because I mean that's I think part of a duty, like a police chief, to get a second coming up, and a Parks and Recreation guy, have someone in the wings waiting to take over, and same with the DPW. That should be part of their job, is to have someone trained and ready to take over for them. Because you never know, retiring or death or something, there has to be a person in position in all departments to take over in case of emergency. Because God forbid something happen to any of the department heads, we got to be prepared. We can't rely on taking out job applications. We should be internal on these situations. We should be at the ready instead of having to go out for bids and interviews and things of that nature for this situation. That's why we have deputies.
Yeah, and I want to bring in the best person I can, but if this council would authorize and I don't have a problem in regards to, as we advertise, if we just say pay based upon experience level or leaving it, I forget the...
We proposed up to, instead of 75,000, making it up to 75,000,
Yeah, and
which keeps it open to other pays.
That's a good one. And in the case, like even when I hired Linda, I had indicated to her, I'm bringing her in, and this was before all these changes were made, at a lower rate, with the intent that after 6 months, I can give them a $5,000 or $10,000 increase if they're working out. And so that's been my pattern. Even with in the community development, I did not authorize the full amount of the pay increase because he was a newer department head, and I knew that would have an effect. You'll get this, Councilman Abdel. It had an effect on the other and longer serving department heads. I sat down with them and I said, Joe, I can't give you the full amount because I think the council originally authorized 80 grand. And I said, Joe, I can't go beyond 75 because of what some of the other department heads. So I used that, and then it's a little bit of incentive. If they're working out real well, they get an increase, and that's how we deal with it. And so that's what my intent is. So, I mean, if you could give me some kind of, at the next meeting, I'll put a letter on the agenda, but if you could give me, for these positions, they're going to be all, brand new people to the positions, no question about it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go.
Councilman Wenzel.
I'm going to go by my previous statement of giving the $2,500 raises to show our good faith and looking at the further the audit results. I know it's not going to make some people happy, but I believe that we got to show that we do care about these people, and a $20,000 chunk lump raise is a lot. I haven't met one resident that said, I agree with that, 20,000. I've heard people say, give them, $1,000 a year for 20 years, $2,000 for 10 years, I mean, all kinds of things, but not one person, and I talked to literally probably 100, not one said, I agree with a $20,000 raise. Even if it's bringing it up to par, in uncertain times, you can't just, bam, here's 20,000. That's a lot of money. I mean, I'd love to have a $20,000 raise. That'd go, that'd give me up to almost 30,000.
Okay, any further discussion before we open it up to the public?
Can I mention one other thing?
Sure, Mayor.
I know that, I don't think there's anybody here from the police department. Oh, Chief, yeah. One of the things I want to point out, and it's important from, I already have some police officers because we don't have enough dispatchers. And we've been having a real rough time as other communities are hiring dispatchers. So in order to cover it, we're taking an officer off the road or a supervisor and sticking them in dispatch. And in the same way, what has happened is that, and a lot of the FOIAs come into our department, and because the FOIA directors, but with all of the cameras on the cars and all of that information, we are getting just overwhelmed, and it requires what we're doing now, because there's so many, we're having a police officer reviewing because they have to redact some of the items and things. And so we're losing now another police officer, and this investigative service secretary position, Chief, you can talk about it, but you were looking at a highly trained individual whose job it would be to be looking at the films and meeting the FOIA requirement, but at the same time, and they're just being overwhelmed.
Don't we have don't we have a thing out there asking to hire another police officer, if I recall correctly? HR?
No, we're hiring.
Yeah, I thought you were.
2 more, but we're still 8 or 9 short. So the process, by the time you get 2 more retirements come up. So we've been running short for a while,
But you have an ongoing thing to hire, so there is that out there to hire more police officers, correct?
we just interviewed 5 yesterday.
Good.
Mike, maybe you can talk to the chief in regards to that.
The investigative services section secretary, for lack of better words, the Freedom of Information Act requests that we're getting, as the mayor mentioned, with all the digital format that we have in place with our in-car cameras, and, you know, if we go to body cams, which would be an incredible increase in the amount of digital data that we are going to have to produce under these FOIA requests. So it's not just copying a piece of paper and handing it to somebody or getting a copy of the police report. The lieutenant in charge of the records division is currently with his staff going through, and literally you have to watch video minute for minute to decide what you have to redact. Birth dates, names, driving records, whatever the case may be, that comes out over the air during the course of the natural recording and the police function, whatever is going on. So these are increasing, and this isn't something that we can just say, well, we're not going to do it. It's mandated by law, and we can't keep up. And I know we're hiring police officers, but we've been running short for probably 5 years now, between 10 to 15 officers. And we're putting people, like the mayor said, it's like the, you know, sticking your finger when the dike breaks in another hole and another one pops out. And that's what we're running into.
Okay.
That position will cost us money if we do not fill it.
All right, thank you. Councilman Wenzel.
Well, I think it's ludicrous to take a officer off the field and put him behind a phone. I mean, in the past, anytime they've been asked to get a new police officer, we've approved it with no questions at all. If it's that important, I mean, we would do that in a second. To take someone off the street and put them on a phone, I can't even fathom that. That's ridiculous. And my question is for this position, do you have a person in mind for that position, Chief?
No.
No,
We're
okay.
going to post it until we have.
Is there going to be specific training required for that?
Yes, there will be. But it was a $40,000 a year position. We were not going to start the position until January. So really it was only $20,000. You guys cut the $40,000 the whole year, but we weren't projected to start that until January. So it was just from January until next June, $20,000. And yes, we're looking for someone. We would have to post it, someone who's got some qualifications in that area. So it's a non-union position, but still a civil service. We explained. So have to go through civil service, testing, and then we would select someone. So.
Well, you know, we take your word on it. We depend on you being really reliable to us, your comments, and this is something we can consider also, I think. If it's something, it seems like we weren't sure exactly what this position was. We asked around, and we got all kinds of different answers, but if we could get it exact, precise, I know, does he look at video all day, or is that, I mean, is that the job?
Chief Alton and Deputy Chief Petrie here in the next month, so maybe they could explain, but it's, yeah, they reviewed the video and the different FOIA requests that come in all day.
Is somebody doing that now?
Yes.
Who's doing it now?
It has to be done.
Yeah.
Well, Lieutenant Corey Smith's in charge of the records division and the staff that he has doing it there, but again, you're taking a lieutenant of a division, making them, as you said, watch videos all day, which, you know, is simplifying it quite a bit, but these are legal mandates that, we don't like it either, but these are legal mandates that we have to follow.
What's the legal mandate?
Under the Freedom of Information Act, the requests that have to be, we have to follow that law. If you come in and you want a copy of a police report, we have to provide it for you under certain guidelines. Okay. We can not have to if there's ongoing investigation, things of that nature.
Okay.
But this is a mandated law that we have to follow.
Just to make it clear, the position isn't mandated. The information they have to provide, we have to provide is mandated.
The service that we give, we have to provide by law.
Right. Okay.
I see a lot of FOIA from attorneys that we refer over to you
There's a
guys.
thing called data mining, that, you know, throw attorneys under the bus, that, you know, there's a lot more increase in FOIA requests to see what police officers are doing on a daily basis and comparing that to what they did on this particular incident. Some of them seem a little far-reaching as far as that goes, but that's not our decision to make. If it's a FOIA request and it's a fillable and it's required by law, we have to give it to them.
Well, I can see how this could be detrimental in a lawsuit even, you know, against the city if we had some kind of incident.
Definitely penalty for it, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion, or should we open it up to the public? Okay. This time, we're going to open it up to the public. We ask for a 3-minute limit. State your name and your address, and please don't comment on something that's already been commented on, so we don't repeat ourselves. Go ahead.
Hello, John Riley, Amboy Street, Dearborn Heights. Last year's audit showed a $1.4 million surplus, which added to our fund balance. And I was here when the State Department of Treasury, when we had a deficit in the fund balance, and the Department of Treasury was thinking about, talking to us about the deficit reduction plan. We're beyond that phase. We've been running at surpluses as Plant Moran came forward to this council in the past and explained. This coming year's budget for year ending June 30, 2016 is going to be a surplus. I can tell by the cash that we had on hand. As you can recall, I came before you and asked, to approve the possibility for me to make interfund loans if needed, and it was not needed. The cash surplus between June 30th of 2017 and June 30th, 2018 was a positive $2 million. So I would anticipate that this year's budget, when it comes out, is going to have a couple $1 million surplus. And so I'm just concerned that you're making examples of some of these pays or saying that we're going to go to emergency manager, because I don't see that happening. So the city hired a new controller back in January, and I mentioned before, I never had any opportunity to work with the prior controller. And we got a notice from the state where we had to fill out these forms regarding pensions, retiree health care, and all of that information. I participated in the filling out of those forms along with the new city controller because she was new on the job. We pulled the numbers from those reports from the audit. And so, it was no secret that, the retiree health care, the post-employment benefits were out there. It's just now that Public Act 202 has required the cities now to say, how are you going to start pre-funding that? And that's, that's where we're at. But I went to my office and grabbed the audit, and if you look on page 60 down at the bottom of the audit for June 30th, 2017, you'll see the numbers down there, the unfunded liability numbers. So it may have been buried in there, but it's been in the audit. It's been no secret. It's just now, again, that we have to start doing some pre-funding of that. And I'm going to end kind of when I was walking out at the last meeting, the gentleman, I don't even recall, that was talking about his driveway because they were building too close. Well, he worked at Wayne County in the treasurer's office, and he said, wow, do they pay the controller that? He said, I worked at Wayne County. I was in the accounting department. I made $30,000 more than that. He said, I can't believe it. And I said, I know. I just don't think it's right. And, the controller came in replacing a prior controller who was increased, from his deputy job into the job and not given his full pay. And then you're hiring somebody experienced from the outside who has qualifications, and which I see now from working with for 9 months, the detail that she's getting into, the way she's working the audit, the way she's working in, with my office and with the auditors, and really trying to get up to speed. Again, we don't want to lose qualified people, and you're not going to be able to get good qualified people if you have pay raises that are significantly below what the market is. And it's really something you need to consider. And I think, originally waiting for the audit was the plan, and then we went forward with these cuts, but now, we have to wait, till November for the audit. But I can tell you the audit's going to show a positive surplus. I can see it in the cash balances. Okay. And so I just think you really need to reconsider and look at making some of these pays fair for what these individuals are doing, because we've been running lean and mean for too long, and we're running surpluses, so we have to take care of the department heads too.
Okay, thank you very much.
I got a question.
Councilman Wenzel?
John Riley, you said you're anticipating a $2 million surplus. Is that taking consideration any retirements that are going to happen?
Well, I don't understand. I mean, I mean, the surplus is, I mean, how we ran between July 1st of 2017 and June 30th, 2018. Again, I'm not privy to what the financial numbers are, okay, but I can see in the cash balances, just like when we were going to deficit, and at one point on June 30th, we were borrowing $9 million to make it through. Well, now I'm telling you that we had a surplus last year that we didn't have to borrow money, and we had $2 million more this year because, and we didn't have to borrow money again. You know, and so there are positive aspects, and I think everybody keeps hammering on the negative or that big number. That big number's always been there, and yes, we have to come up with a plan. The state's told us that in Public Act 202, you have to come up with a plan, and I think that's being worked on with Plant Moran and the administration. You know, so retirements, I guess, you know, I can't talk what's going on in the future. I'm saying what was the operations between July 1st, 2017 and June 30th, 2018.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Okay, because we're...
I'd like to ask the treasurer, who is not an appointed position, who's in an elected position, and obviously would like to all hope is totally objective. Are we, from your perspective, in an emergency management situation?
No.
Okay, because my concern, if we keep saying that, and I know somebody mentioned that, you know, the treasurer said this, my concern is the residents are going to start to get scared with everything else going on, right, you know, that they've already got to worry about. So with the surplus, obviously, we're not in an emergency management situation, and I hope not.
It also affects economic development. Absolutely. Because when businesses, and they talk to me, and they ask me, how's the community financially, and I tell them, like, we're financially strong, very strong. And if you start hammering on emergency, they won't invest here.
So, I mean, you know, years ago, we were in a deficit situation, and we had to go up to the state. The mayor, myself, I think the human resource director went, the council chairperson, because I drove with Ken Barron up to the state. We had to meet with the State Department of Treasury, came up with a deficit reduction plan. It was a 5-year plan. I think it was succeeded in 4 years to get out of the deficit. So, I mean, that's what puts you into the emergency management situation. Now, yeah, I mean, some communities, the pension funding can cause that, but the pension funding isn't the cause here. We have the health care, and it has to be addressed, and that's what I think needs to be focused on, working on the deficit reduction plan for that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Next, state your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Kim Constant, and I'm from 5527 Heather Lane. I'm here to speak on behalf of my position. I heard my name mentioned several times up there, so I really thought it was time that I actually speak on my behalf. Because you guys were discussing employee increases today, with much anguish, I've decided to inform you that I have not been receiving my salary increase that this council approved for my position. The other 3 deputies have been receiving their increases since July 1st, 2018. 2 of these deputies are relatively new. The other has been a deputy for approximately 9 years. In 2011, I gave back 10% of my salary, just as everyone else did, and it has not been reinstated yet. By being treated equally with the other deputies, in essence, this would increase, or this would reinstate my 10% as it has for the deputy treasurer. This body approved the same increase for me, for my position, yet I have not received all but 1% of it. I didn't even receive that in my first paycheck until I called Linda Vance, the controller, to ask why I didn't receive it. She said, or she told me, that it was not approved by the administration for me to receive it. She's only doing what she's told. Essentially, I am being penalized for working for the city of Dearborn Heights for more than 30 years. If the reasoning is to keep all of the deputies the same, then I am being treated unequally. The Michigan Civil Service rules allow for employees with seniority to be treated differently in respect to pay. Because my position is civil service, I have requested a civil service hearing to review my case, and I have been denied. According to the chair of the Civil Service Commission, the Human Resources Director, Elizabeth Perry, has told him that I will not receive a civil service hearing. I asked him why, and he told me he did not know. And now my boss is retiring. and I have been told several times I am not even being considered for the position. I have worked for the city residents for over 30 years. I've given my heart and soul to the city. It's upsetting to me that I can be singled out and treated so unfairly for things other than my job performance.
And I'm sure if I might say one thing, I don't know if you've submitted. Okay, I have not reviewed any of them. I don't even know how many we received because right now I don't know what the position would
I've
pay.
been told by several people that they've heard that I'm not even being considered.
That is in error.
What?
That is in error.
I hope so.
Me too.
Me too.
Elizabeth Svoda Perry from the Human Resource Director position, actually. I wasn't planning on speaking, but what Ms. Conson referred to is a conversation that I never had with the Civil Service Commission president, which...
That is exactly what he told me. I am not going to have a hearing, and he said it was by your decision, and he did not know.
It was not my decision.
Okay, point of order.
It was not my decision.
Let her speak.
It took me over a month to contact the president about interviews. He never spoke to me about a hearing. In fact, the other two commissioners tried to reach him. It has come to my understanding that there's more information maybe related to the commission president that I don't wish to say publicly, but I will tell you that I did not have a discussion with Mr. Schwarzy about your
Okay, address the
hearing.
council, please.
Sorry.
Not the audience.
I'm sorry. I did not have a discussion with Mr. Schwarzy, who is the president of the Civil Service Commission, and I never said a hearing would denied. That's not my point. That's
So
not my
would you allow a
place.
hearing to happen then?
That's not my
Is that
point.
what you're saying?
That's not my role. That's their role. That's their role. Yes, have it. I mean, but that's not my place.
Check the rules of civil service. It's a civil service.
I mean, Gary Miyake is our
state law.
corporation counsel. The Human Resource Director does not say what the Civil Service Commission does. And that's not my place to have a hearing or not. I've participated in
Okay, thank you then.
I was going to say there is one good news, that our healthcare premiums are very good. We had a meeting with all the unions today, and we talked about the healthcare. So the renewal, it's good. What we've been doing with the active employees and some of the retirees, it's working. It's working. And this is the first time that I met with the unions, and their employees are not going to see an increase in employee contribution, which means neither will the city. And something we're doing is working.
Thank you very much. Any other further comment?
Yep. My name is Linda Vance. I am not a resident of the city of Dearborn Heights, but I am the new comptroller as of January. I'd like to address this council because I've been here for 9 months. I went through the budget process with everybody. During the budget process, I provided information to the council with respect to pay increases. The department heads and other employees were in that classification that I gave. I pointed out to the council that every employee in this city that took a pay cut back in 2010, all of the unions have been restored to a rate above and beyond what they took a cut, plus their hours are still less. The department heads, and I know there's some deputies involved as well, are the only class of employees at that time that have not been made whole or even caught up with a little bit of an increase. The raises that this council approved during their budget process was to restore most of these employees to the rate or close to the rate that they were at back in 2011. I myself am an exception because I'm a new department head and I didn't take that pay cut, but the person prior to me that had that pay cut was making way more than what I was at that point in time, and I was still fine with the idea of the $75,000, $80,000 that the mayor recommended for me. When you're talking about cutting these people back again, and some of these department heads, they were hired shortly after, so they never got their incremental raises to get them to the full amount that other department heads, you need to reconsider what you're considering here, because you've already lost several and you could lose more. The amount of the $168 million, as Mr. Riley stated, was in your financial statements, has been in your financial statements. The letter was addressed to me that we did not get. It was addressed in an email and it was put in the spam folder, as I told you. Which is correct. You can shake your head if you'd like, ma'am, but I did not get it. As soon as I found the notice that we had to file a corrective action plan, I brought that to the mayor's attention directly. You also need to note that through the state, even though we didn't get that notice from, whether if you want to debate that or not, it was the municipality's decision whether to file for a waiver or not. We did not file for one because we did not receive the notice, but that did not affect the outcome. Even if we filed a waiver, unless we had a plan in action, which is what we need to do now, it would have been denied. 90% of all of the communities that did file a waiver were denied, and you can look on the state website for that fact. Plant Moran has also specified that. I think some clarification and transparency is very important to this community. And to go back and look at these records, like you were discussing about the budget and not knowing, you need to look back and rethink everything that you've thought of, because there is some improprieties here where the timelines are not fitting, and we are not anywhere close to emergency management.
Okay, thank you.
With Riley,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next. Again, state your name, your address, and limit it to 3 minutes.
Jack McIntyre, Hazelton Street, Dearborn Heights. Been a resident since 1964. I spoke the last time, but I'm really asking a very serious request here. Please stop telling people that we're close to receivership or anything else. People are panicking, and you're creating the panic. If you're going to state something, make sure you're stating it not because you talked to this guy or this guy. There are professionals already in the room, whether you like them or not, or you believe in them or not, that are telling you, one in particular that has nothing to gain by it, he's an elected official, that we're not there. It's dangerous when you throw things out into the world and just let them fall wherever. So this has always been a difficult thing to talk about money. When I was first hired here, I was asked as a favor by the mayor, since my position wasn't already approved in the budget and they had an open supervisor's position, would I be willing to come in as a director but at a supervisor's pay? So I did. In July, when the new budget year started, then my salary was brought up to what most people were at when they took the cut. And I was willing to do that. Although it was all over the blogs that I just got a huge raise and why did I deserve it? I already spent time, just by my example of the way I'm doing my department and running my department, showing you that I'm doing a good job. I'm committed to this. And the people that you have here are all residents, most of them that are being affected by this, with the exception of Linda, and we're still here. We're coming every day, despite you might have 10 or 12 people calling you. I have 30 or 40 people calling me saying, what is going on? Who is going to get control of this situation? And then the next question is, who do you have to answer to besides the residents? Who do you need to answer to legally for what you're doing? Don't tell me this is not personal. Do not tell me it's not personal. Because you offered in the middle of a budget hearing, no disrespect to Kim, but you came out of a meeting and offered Kim a raise when it wasn't suggested, and in the same breath you denied other raises. That makes no sense. That's not even being responsible. It is totally a personal thing. I had someone randomly just come up to me the other day and say, guess what I heard? I said, what? They're doing it on purpose. Why would they do it on purpose? They're doing it on purpose because they don't like the mayor that much. They're so unsatisfied with what happened in last year's election that they're willing to go to this length to destroy our city in the process. People are Googling what's happening here. The word is, you know how Facebook works, it's spreading all over the state and eventually probably all over the country. And last but not least, Plant Moran is an internationally recognized auditing company. I think they have a lawsuit against us for slander, the way people are saying that they are deciding, handpicking what they're auditing. That's insulting. That's insulting to them.
Thank you.
And Mr. Wenzel, through the chair, with all due respect, it is personal. And I appreciate your offer, but it's personal. You and I both know that. This is all personal.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm still coming to work tomorrow.
Gary Mayotke, Plainfield Street, Dearborn Heights. I wasn't planning to comment, but I will on three things. One, if Ms. Constant hasn't received something, she should make sure she files something with the city clerk. The city clerk is supposed to end up acting in a secretarial role to the commission. I haven't been consulted with regard to any sort of request for hearing, and normally I would be. So that's a suggestion. Two, I stand by my opinion. Anyone who ends up saying that I tortured the meaning of the word annually is simply wrong. And the people who took that position originally thought that there was an ordinance that was in place and weren't even able to legally be able to tell that the item involved was not an ordinance but was a council motion. Three, you've just ended up having some comments that have ended up being made with respect to things being personal. And there have been certain inconsistencies with respect to the way all these issues have ended up being approached. And without going too much further than this, I must state that there's some difficulties that could potentially be created in terms of exposure, including personal liability on behalf of certain individuals, if they end up basically making decisions that are not justified by legitimate non-discriminatory reasons. And then finally, I appreciate the statements made by Councilman Constant and Councilman Abdallah. I'm curious that we did not really end up hearing anything other than these items, the justifications for these decisions have already been discussed, which they have not been, and they have not been discussed at least here. And that's all I'll leave it with.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any further comment?
Good evening, Chief Brogan with the Fire Department. I just wanted to, Councilman Wenzel, you did ask about the deputy chief position that was removed from the council when you had all the cuts, and that is true. We are going to, with the SAFER grant, we are going to promote the battalion chiefs, and once those are promoted, we will be able to eliminate that position. So that's first of all. Secondly, you see there's a lot of firemen here, and the mayor mentioned, when you talk about emergency management, that gets the citizens very concerned. Well, they're very politically active. Our group is. They watch all the council meetings, and they hear that kind of talk too, and then they start calling me almost instantly. I want to know what's going on, I've told them I think the city's doing very well. Everything I've heard has been very positive. Reports from the mayor, reports from, well, you heard John Riley said it very well. If there truly is a problem, we want to know. The last time this happened, we were the first union. We took a 10% cut. We're dedicated to the city. We're dedicated to the team as a group. We want to see this city succeed. Our livelihood depends on that. It's something extremely important to us. And so when we hear just today, this is just the beginning of the cuts. We're in uncertain times, emergency manager, financial crisis. It's alarming to us, and we want to know, if that's the case. And I'm not sure where we need to hear it from that it's not. We've heard Plant Moran is a very reputable group. I'm not sure who else can tell us that's going to satisfy the group that we're doing okay. The treasurer just told us possibly a $2 million surplus this year, and we had over $1 million surplus last year. That doesn't sound. We were here during the crisis last time, and it was very scary. We were worried about how the city was going to go on. Cities were collapsing all around us. we don't want to go through that again. The 10% cut, it took one union meeting and it passed with 100% in one vote to take a 10% cut. That's how scared we were of the success of the city. We're very dedicated to the success of the city. So we want to be very, very careful with the words we use in financial crisis and emergency management. That's very meaningful words to us. That's why we see this group here tonight, and I hope that we can get this settled and move forward and somehow, become all on the same team again.
Thank you.
Can I just... If I might, I want to thank all the firefighters. When we did get in those rough financial years, it was the fire department that came forth first, helped us out, and I can't thank you enough. You've done so much and continue to do so much for this community. And I will say, as a mayor, you get complaints about everybody. I receive no complaints from the fire department. Keep up the good work, guys.
I'll get that. Thank you, Mayor.
State your name, address, and limit it to 3 minutes, please.
Good evening, everyone. Zuhair Abdha, 354 Rosemary. I want first to thank Chief Gavin when he stood up there last few weeks ago and he said, we need transparency. We are a family. And I appreciate what Christina Kramers-Laszlo said, that we are one family, we should work together, we should not do anything to harm each other. She stood in this place. I agree with them 100%. What I don't like is some things happening during the budget, things I didn't like at all as a resident, as taxpayers. I've been here for 26 years and I've been attending here for a long time. I just want to ask anybody who knows why the 3 or 4 head of department accepted $55,000 a year and take their pension. Anybody can answer that?
Wasn't there?
Mr. Mayor, do you have an...
Mr. Mayor?
I didn't hear the full question.
The question is, you had made an agreement with 4 heads of department to take $55,000 a year plus pension. Basically, they retired at that time in 2012. And they accepted $55,000, and for 6 years they never asked for anything. Why did they accept that contract or that agreement with the city at that time?
We were in very difficult economic times, and we had to come up, and that was what I believe was a very creative solution to help reach a point where we could start running surpluses again. So we asked those that were old enough and met the requirements, because you also have to meet IRS requirements for the retirement and also be able to receive a pay. And I will tell you that all of them have told me that if they knew all the attacks and everything that would come upon them, they would have refused that deal 5 years ago. Thankfully, they did. We saved probably $1 million, my guess, over the 5 years. Maybe not $1 million, but a considerable amount of money as a result of their sacrifice. And then they got attacked over it. And no one ever came to the conclusion that they would not, that they would be frozen for the rest of their life. That was not part of any condition and no discussion. And that's how it came about. There's the other thing that saved this community, quite frankly, were these drop programs with the police and fire. People objected after the fact and playing Monday morning quarterback, but the fact of the matter was, as was mentioned, this community was starting to run some rather huge deficits when the economy went zero and the property values completely dropped. We have not even seen property values, the amount of tax revenue this city receives, even been restored to what it was before that economic collapse. It's now estimated that in year 2023 or 2024, we will be back to where we were many years ago, 2008. So it required creative thought. I have to thank the police union, back then it was the AFSCME union. We went to all of them. In this particular room, the AFSCME, we did not want to have layoffs. One of the things that I learned is with a layoff process in this city, creates this bumping situation. So you would have had, I'll just make up a number, 100 employees, and 85 of them would have bumped in other jobs. That would have been chaotic. We asked them if they would agree to a reduction. We worked out a reduction in which Friday was closed, and they took a pay reduction as a result of it. All that come together, as well as an important point was to go to the residents and ask them for a Headley override. If any one of those pieces had not come in, we would have been in dire state. In essence, what we did is we served like an emergency manager in here with the help of the council members that were here, the employees that were here, and we all sacrificed and we all worked together and we saved this city. And I'm proud of being a part of that. But it was all the employees, the unions, and everybody else that helped us out. It's a long answer to your question, but nevertheless, it was a combination. And there were other things that we saved on as a result to get us back to a balanced budget and now surpluses.
Okay, thank you. Continue.
Yes.
We have time left.
Now, since when, I have a question for the treasurer, since when Plant Moran mentioned in their reports the $168 million for the health care?
I didn't go back and look at the reports. But
Was it there on June 30th, 2017?
Yes, that's the report that
So
I have.
you do see that report, sir?
Yeah, I went back 5 years, and I saw it in the, I didn't go back a 6th year, but it's, I forget the footnote number, but it 15?
No, I'm lucky 13.
It is there.
13.
I went a couple of years and it is there.
Yeah.
All I want to see, the city council, I think previous city council approved $2 million for the health care system.
Yeah, I had asked them to, because we were starting to run surpluses again, but to run this city or any city, when I went to school many years ago at Michigan, University of Michigan, Dearborn, they taught us, obviously we were all taught accrual accounting. The one thing that I've learned in my time here is you also have to look at the cash. You can be in a situation that you could look at the books and you'd be in a positive situation. This is not uncommon for businesses too. You have to look at the cash. And so that is the other side that I'm always looking at because if you don't have money to pay the payroll and to pay the contractors that you're using, you're insolvent, even though you could look good in your books. So the cash is very critical, and we're always conscious of both of those two elements. But the treasurer's absolutely correct. We've talked about it. There's a direct correlation between our performance and the amount of cash. And one of the good signs to see that we're doing well is we're not borrowing money. And in that last month of June is when we pay the pension and some of the other large bills. And there's also some benefits to employees that are paid. And if we are able to do that and not borrow money, we're doing a good job. And so that's the other aspect that I've learned and I watch very carefully. And that was the thing, the treasurer's been very helpful with this. And one of the things when we were looking at buying the golf course, he mentioned to me, and we mentioned to Gary Miotke, the timing of that was important because of when the tax revenues hit, and that all worked out. But when we first made the offer to buy it for $1.8 million, we wanted to make sure we had enough cash to pay for it. Like I said, it worked out.
You did tell me at Target when I met you that you have more money in the surplus than what you anticipated, and I appreciate that before the election. I just want the union people to understand, and all the city employees, when I come here, I don't have vendetta against you or anybody else. But as a resident, I just want to see that you get what you deserve, what you worked for. Your money is in the right place, so we don't fall short sometime.
It never wasn't.
The $2 million, Mr. Mayor, if you can start putting them on the side, you still have to pay the $3-point-some million. So we have to put $2 million every year extra for the next 3 years to cover. Am I correct?
Okay.
Or?
Not necessarily. We're working with a division of Plant Moran. What's his name, Brian?
Brian Campbell, yeah.
Okay, Brian, and we have already come up with a concept that would satisfy it, and I'll share with you. The council has to concur in the plan, but part of it needs to be general fund, and part of it's water, part of it's library. So that becomes, there'll be two accounts, at least two accounts, because the police and fire legacy costs regards to health care cannot be commingled with the other employees. And the reason for that is they come under Act 345, and that's got to be a separate pot just for them. So we hope that we are able to pre-fund healthcare using 345. So the contribution for the police and fire will come out of the Act 345 millage. What's left, the liability for the, I'll say, the general government, the non-union people, and that would get allocated to the general fund, the water fund for those people that work in the water and sewer division, and then the library people would contribute. So the number is being actuarially developed by, I forget the company, but I think we're paying them next on the next bill, and they're calculating it by classification. And we've asked Plant Moran to review those classifications so that they're accurate, so nobody's getting more, being required to pay more than they should. So those will create two healthcare funds, and what we have to do is, if I recall right, I think I still got my notes on there, we have to be at 40% in the next 20 years? 30 years.
30 years.
I feel very comfortable with that. That we will be able to achieve that. I think the contribution out of the general fund will probably be closer to $500,000. So in essence, by having $2 million already set aside, we probably are funding the first 4 years of it. And then what we'll need to do is build into future budgets this $500,000 so that we can achieve that, and then use the Act 345 millage to pre-fund for our police and fire. And we'll keep, I would recommend that the two pots, and I think legally we have to keep them separate. And one of the things that every time we do a swearing in of new police officers and firefighters, and like Councilman Abdullah's almost always here, Lisa Hicks Clayton's almost always here for them, and I always tell the new people, I will never ever sign off on a hiring if I didn't think you could come in here, retire, and get your benefits. And I feel very strongly about that. I would not want to hire somebody in here and 10 years later they don't have a job, or the community. So I give that same speech all the time, but it's the truth. I really believe that, and I think we've really secured. And I'll just say one more thing. We all have to work together. These numbers, we don't have a Ford Motor Company. We do not have industry like these other communities. It's a struggle, but at the same time, we got great employees. We need to pay them, need to keep them. And I know that when I need a police officer or a fire department, I know that I'm getting the best service possible.
I can't agree more with you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. At this time, it's 3-1.
I did state many times that I don't mind giving people their raises if they deserve it and if we have money. I hope everybody in the city put yourselves in the same boat like Bob Ankrap and Kim Constant. You are upset because they took money. They are upset because they lost their money. I hope we should be fair to everyone and to everybody in here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Chief.
Go ahead.
He's got a gun.
I'll make it real quick. As you know, my time is coming to an end. I've spent many years with the city, over 38 years. A lot of these young policemen, firemen weren't even born when I started. I've been through the ups and downs with the city. We've been in financial crisis. When I got hired, you know, there was a hiring freeze right after me. We're going to go broke, this and that. I just want to say all this negative stuff hurts. It hurts the employees. Every one of these firemen, policemen, I think we have the best employees in any city around. Our fire department's awesome. Naturally, I'm going to say the police department, but all our city workers. And it just hurts me when I see, you know, some of this discussion, and then I'll see some of these senior people that worked with city a long time get upset and they walk out of the room or they make comments. It just, I'm on my way out. I just think we need to work as a team to go in the right direction. And that's my commitment I'm giving everyone. I'm a resident here. I'll still be around. I want everyone to work together. We can't have individual plans. We all got to work together. We know that. Somehow we all got to come together and go in the right direction. As to our department heads, I've worked with many over the years. This group that we have now, we have our staff meetings with the mayor every week, and not one person, if they were in a time of need, would someone not help them. I mean, we all work as a team. If it's a police issue, they have their input. We have you know, input in HR. And Elizabeth does such a great job. Maybe as council, maybe you guys don't see it, but our employees at the city deal with her every day on health care. When there's an issue, call Liz. Liz is up all night doing this stuff. So I just want to say I think everyone deserves their pay, but I just hope we kind of keep the negative down and we move in the right direction. We work as a team. We have some great employees in this city, and we got to lead by example up here at the top, as we do as department heads, and them as employees. We all got to lead by example. So thank you for your time and effort.
Thank you.
My name is Al Kevwich. I live on Ann Arbor Trail. I am pretty dedicated to watching council meetings, and typically I don't come to these meetings to see what the development work is that all of you are doing. I've heard a lot of applause in here tonight. I'm going to applaud all of you as council people.
Thank you.
You've taken a major responsibility. You have major decisions to make, and I hope that you continue to endeavor to get to wherever we need to go. There will be scrapes and there's going to be bumps, but as a taxpayer, I think you owe the taxpayers fidelity to us. The second group I think that's owed fidelity would be the employees, not the directors, but the employees. The third group would be the directors, but above all, the citizens should be given the greatest consideration. I want to again thank you for your effort, and in my judgment, the citizens rescued this city when I think there were questionable financial things going on. When the economy was crashing, there were council members here that were trying to point out when that was developing that things needed to be done in a budgetary way, and there wasn't a good response. And we had the general collapse of the economy and the near collapse of this city. So I want you to keep in mind fidelity to the citizens. And the second point, as I watch the water rates go up, I think some attention has to be given to somehow taking budgetary items, if it's possible, to start leveling off those rates, because I think they've been exorbitant. And I know the city cannot control all of that because there's an outside agency that does some of that. But I think that water is a fundamental life thing, and that's for all of us. And I'd like to see the council work some effort to make those rates less exorbitant on the citizens. So again, I want to applaud all of you for taking the position of being elected and trying to be engaged in what is a very hard job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Right here.
Step up to the podium, please, and state your name and...
My name's Christina Laszlo. I live on Charlesworth. I'm going to talk until I'm cut off because I got a lot of things to say. I agree with you.
Okay, first of all, you understand there is a 3-minute limit, so...
Yeah, I know, until you cut me off.
Okay.
I'll talk. I agree with you. I do believe that all elected officials are responsible to the residents, and I would question council members making comments on live air that they would give $200,000 to a school district without first checking if they were owed it, or they would give 6 months free rent to an enterprise that is now renting one of our city buildings. When the council asked about Public Act 202 and the $168 million liability, we do pay as we go. And why this law came into effect is companies couldn't pay as they go, as they were going bankrupt and other things. We pay as we go. This is a pre-funding that we have to do. This number has been around, I don't want to say since 2012, I think it's before that, and a GASB 45 number. Maybe not every single member, but this council body has been given reports at least every 2 years and sometimes more than that by the actuary that does these numbers. Stating anything less, it's skewing public perception. Somebody else asked why the Dearborn Heights department heads, some of them went down to $55,000. That did save the money, or the city, over $1 million a year. We cut everybody, the department heads, not to correct the mayor, but the department heads came up first and voluntarily gave their 10%. And some of us weren't even at our full level yet. We were still in steps. We gave our 10% and there still wasn't enough money. So myself, Vince McCarry, Elizabeth Swoda Perry, and the mayor sat down and we came up with this plan to save, in some aspects, over 50% of their salaries when you factor in the longevity, and not have to pay additional pension expenses, pension contributions for new people, or health care. It did save over $1 million. Lastly, hopefully I got time, speaking about public perception, these past few months there's been comments that our roads aren't done, the lights are out, all these other things. A couple of us took it upon ourselves to start asking residents if they're happy with the service. Before I give the answers that we've got, we are not responsible for streetlights. When we are informed, we do call DTE. We work with DTE to get them back on. We've gotten negative comments here and there, but overall, once we solve their concern that they come up, they are happy. People are moving here because we have low crime rates, we have rising property values, our garbage is picked up, our streets are swept, the response times are low, and we have low taxes. So there is a reason why people are here, and the majority of people, not the 17 that some of you might hear from, but the majority of people that we deal with are happy with their service and happy with their city.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Councilor Wenzel?
Well, the chief got up and he said it hurts him to see what's going on here. And, well, it hurts me to be accused of risking the city for a personal vendetta, which was stated earlier. I know that I've lived in the city my whole life. I got a brand new family, 5 little kids. I'm building an addition on my house instead of moving out of the city. I'm gonna live here my whole life, and I would never do anything to jeopardize the city. That statement hurts really bad. And I don't know how many city employees live in this city, I'll tell you one thing, 100% of us live in this city, and we're not moving right now. Thank you. And to make a comment like we're trying to destroy the city for a personal reason, that hurts right here. I'm serious. And it also hurts when that one resident came up and said, you know, all these applause going on for everything. Let's applaud the city council. All these people just sat there with their hands on their lap. That hurts. That really hurt a lot. To every one of you that didn't clap. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. This concludes our study session for tonight.